Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and today we are going to be doing our 3 segments as usual. And the first segment is going to be a debate on who is closer to the GOAT, in my personal opinion. So I'm primarily going to be looking on the basketball side as well as the football side and maybe some other sports, but it's going to be mainly those two. And I'm also going to be looking at the Knicks filing a protest against the NBA because recently in their previous game against the Houston Rockets, the game ended in free throws because the refs claim that they missed a bad call towards the end of the game. So I'm going to talk more about that later in that second segment. And we also, in the third segment, we're going to do a quick recap of some of the games that happened from last night, as per usual. There's also going to be a fourth segment, so please stick around for that. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everyone, as always, to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. So once again, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. So once again, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And with that in mind, we can go ahead and get into the first segment of the show, which is going to be a debate on who is closer to the GOAT. So this has been brought up recently because Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl, and right now the competition between him and Brady is very, very close, similar to how the debate between LeBron and Michael Jordan is also very close. So Brady, as we all know, Brady has 7 championships. Michael Jordan also has 6 championships, and with 6 Finals MVPs. Tom Brady has 5 Super Bowl MVPs, but that doesn't matter. But essentially, there's the main argument for both of these athletes is the ring category. And whenever people look at Michael Jordan, they look at 6 they look at 6-0 in the NBA Finals, and they look at the fact that he's never lost in a very big game, in a championship game. He won the NCAA tournament. He won several Olympic gold medals, and there was never going in second place for him. And that's sort of the same argument for Tom Brady in the football aspect, and how both of these players have this sort of mentality that they are going to play every single second of the game like it's a game 7, or they're going to find a way to win the game in the end. So the main argument is the rings, and on the football side, it's longevity stats that Tom Brady was able to acquire. He leads all quarterbacks in passing yards, passing touchdowns, the completions. We can go on and on about that, but a lot of these are longevity stats, and for some reason they take into account those stats for Tom, but when they're talking about LeBron, the narrative sort of changes to where it's like, oh, well, he's played a bunch of games, so like he's supposed to get those numbers. He's supposed to be that good. Like, how does that work? Because that's just a really bad double standard, in my opinion, because here on one end you have one player that's being praised for all of these counting stats, but on the other end, in a completely different sport, he gets ridiculed for having these counting stats simply because like it took him this many games for him to reach those numbers and the total counting stats that he has. Like, for example, the total points. Right now, LeBron leads the NBA in most points scored by any player in NBA history. And a lot of his haters are saying, well, I mean, he's LeBron and he should be doing that because, I mean, like, he's been playing for 21 years. He's the oldest player in the league. These are things that, like, it's expected of him. Like, how is that, like, how does that make any sense? That makes absolutely zero sense to me. And of course, the other argument for Tom is that he has the rings, similar to how the argument for Michael Jordan is he has the rings as well. So for Michael Jordan, it's a little bit different because the rings can be taken into account because Michael Jordan was by far the best player on his team because he's won 6 finals MVPs in a row. He's won 3 in a row straight, and then he took a little break from basketball, and then he won 3 in a row again. So the argument for MJ with rings is that he was the best player on those championship teams, and he has all of those rings. And I can understand that argument for Jordan because, like, yes, he was the best player on his team, but that's the same thing that could be said about LeBron because LeBron has also won finals MVPs throughout all of his championship runs, and he's done it with multiple different teammates, not just with the same core that he had. Like, for example, Jordan was unable to make it out of the first round and make a deep playoff run without Scottie Pippen. LeBron has been able to win a championship without Wade. He's won a championship without Kyrie, and he's won a championship without Anthony Davis. And he's been the most valuable player in all of their championship runs up to this point. So that argument shouldn't even be a thing because, like, LeBron has also been doing the same thing that Jordan's been doing. And there's not a lot of context that goes into how these players end up winning in either of the sports. Like, for example, on the football aspect, because we are talking about football, we don't hear anything about how good the defense was when Tom Brady was either on the Pats or on Tampa Bay. And for Jordan, we don't hear how good his team was on either of his championship runs. It makes it seem like they're the only players on that team, when especially in football, when football is a team sport. Like, I saw a stat where Tom Brady, he has a better record throwing 3 interceptions in the playoffs than Aaron Rodgers has throwing 3 touchdowns. Now, similar to that not being talked about and how his defense was able to was able to carry him and to stay afloat in some of these games. That's the same respect that they treat Scottie Pippen, they treat Dennis Rodman, and they treat all the other players on that Bulls lineup, because the Bulls have had a great lineup every single time they've had a great trip in the playoffs or a decent finals run. They always had a great team, and that doesn't really get talked about as much as Michael Jordan gets talked about in those championships. And it's unfair, especially with how good some of these players were. Tony Kukoc, Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant. And one thing about Horace Grant that they don't talk about is how in 1995, Michael Jordan lost a playoff series. And a lot of people don't like to count that playoff series because, Michael Jordan wasn't at 100% in that series. Well, according to the numbers, Michael Jordan averaged 31 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2.5 steals. Now, I don't know about you, that sounds like prime Michael Jordan to me. Like, those numbers are prime Michael Jordan. And the real reason why they didn't win was because they were actually weak at the power forward position. Now, this is something that The Last Dance doesn't tell you, because Michael Jordan obviously wasn't going to tell you. I mean, he did for a little bit, but he didn't really talk about it, and he made it seem like he wasn't at 100%, more so than it was the fault of not having a power forward. So Horace Grant, from 91 to 93, he was the starting power forward for the Chicago Bulls. And he was essentially their third option. He was very, very competitive on the defensive end. He was also a very valuable scoring option, a great rebounder. And that resulted in the Bulls three-peating from 91 to 93. Michael Jordan takes a break, goes into baseball in 94, and then in the middle of the 94-95 season, he comes out of baseball, goes back to playing in the NBA, and while he wasn't necessarily his best for a while, he very much was prime Michael Jordan once he got to the postseason. And once he arrived there, in the same 94 to 95 season, Horace Grant had already signed with the Orlando Magic, which was the team that beat the Chicago Bulls in 6 games in the 1995 postseason. And because of that, because they were weak at the power forward position, and because the Bulls knew they were weak at the power forward position, Michael Jordan decided that they needed to be a power forward, and so the Bulls decided to bring along Dennis Rodman in free agency to play with Michael Jordan. So now they actually have a power forward to compete with that Orlando Magic team. So that is one thing that also doesn't get mentioned about Michael Jordan's career. The fact that the front office for the Chicago Bulls was really good in giving him the help that he needed with drafting and free agent signing and all of that kind of stuff. So the Miami Heat, they did do that. They did a very good job for those 4 years, but it's only 4 years. The Cleveland Cavaliers, on the other hand, they didn't do a good job until LeBron came back the second time, where they drafted Kyrie and they were able to sign Kevin Love. And the Lakers, don't even get me started with the Lakers. The Lakers still, they failed to give LeBron the help, the real help that he needs. Anthony Davis, yes, that's great help, but you also need much more competent role players, which was something that the Bulls were able to get with Tony Kukoc, Paxton, Steve Kerr, all of those players. They were very important. And that's something that gets overlooked when you're talking about Jordan and his career, because we only talk about Jordan. And they barely talk about Scottie Pippen, who, by the way, in a lot of final series was leading the Bulls in every single stat aside from points. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will, or you can take that into serious account like I do. And what was I? I was talking about the Orlando Magic being one of the only teams that was able to beat the Bulls. And once they rematched in 1996 with Dennis Rodman, in the very first game that they played, Horace Grant got injured. And the Bulls were able to sweep the Orlando Magic in 1996, even with Penny and Shaq still healthy in the lineup. So, really, of course, there's no asterisk on that series. Nobody puts an asterisk on that series, despite Horace Grant getting injured. So we weren't able to see that matchup of Dennis Rodman going against Horace Grant and what a healthy Orlando Magic team would do to that same Chicago Bulls team. So Michael Jordan got a little bit lucky with that. And that's another thing that doesn't get taken into account when talking about the GOAT on either side of the sport. There is some immense luck that gets played into a lot of these games, especially with football, where it's only one game compared to where basketball, it's multiple games in a series. So I can give an example for football. We all know the infamous Super Bowl comeback that Tom Brady had. And just to let you guys know, in order to get there, he had to play an overtime game. He is 3-0 in overtime coin tosses. I know this is basketball, but I am pretty knowledgeable in football as well. And the defense was able to hold the best offense to 21 points as opposed to 31 points, which is what they averaged. So similar to that, those kinds of things get overlooked the same way that players that hit game-winning shots also get overlooked, or how the Chicago Bulls had only one less win compared to the previous season after losing Michael Jordan. So the team was still just as good, and they made it to the semi-conference finals against the New York Knicks, and they ended up losing that series in 7 games. So the Chicago Bulls were a very good team, and that's something that gets overlooked. Now with LeBron constantly has to be the best player on his team. He always has to be the leader of his team in every single statistical category that you could think of. He averaged a triple-double in the NBA Finals. He's led several mediocre teams to long playoff runs. He has the peak years. He went 8 straight years making it to the finals, which is something that gets overlooked ridiculously, because for some reason, like, I don't understand what it is, but a lot of these players and like a lot of the media, they don't respect LeBron's 8-year streak of making it all the way to the finals, which doesn't make any sense, because like the main reason why they don't give him credit for that is because he lost in a lot of those finals. But they also don't take into account the team that he had to beat in the finals. Like, he's had to play against the Dynasty Spurs team, which is no joke. They had 3 Hall of Famers at least. And they had a Kawhi Leonard that was really dominant on the defense and was just making a name for himself on the offensive side of the ball when LeBron was on the Miami Heat. He also had to go up against what is arguably the best team to ever be assembled in the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant. That team came 1 game away from sweeping the entire league, and the only team that they lost to was LeBron. Like, LeBron literally made that team run to the Hamptons and try to recruit KD to the lineup. Like, that is absolutely insane to me. And the fact that LeBron had to go against that, like, no team was going to be able to beat that team whatsoever. So this debate on who is closer to the GOAT between Mahomes and Brady and LeBron and Jordan, me personally, I think that LeBron already passed Michael Jordan in the greatest player of all time. He is top 1 in total points in the NBA. He is top 5 in total assists in the NBA as well. He has the clutch gene. He has the peak years. He has every single thing that you could ever need in a basketball player on both sides of the floor. He can defend the 1 through the 5. He can play the 1 through the 5. He has everything that you would need in a player, similar to how Patrick Mahomes has everything that you would want in a quarterback. So for basketball, I personally think that LeBron has already passed Michael Jordan as the GOAT. And for football, I believe that Patrick Mahomes just needs time. Like LeBron James, he's already the GOAT. He's already the greatest basketball player to ever exist. And I don't think there's any other player that's going to be better than him at this rate, because he's still playing the best basketball he can possibly play. And if he can continue this for a year, or maybe even another year after that, like, I think everybody is going to acknowledge him as the greatest basketball player of all time. But with that, we're out of time with our first segment. So now we are going to go into the second segment, where I go ahead and talk about the Knicks filing a protest over their previous games. I will deep dive into that, but stay tuned after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to talk about the Knicks filing a protest on the NBA. But before that, I would like to remind everybody, as always, to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is displayed in the description below, as well as in the ticker at the bottom of the show segment. So once again, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Really helps the show. Makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. So once again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And, excuse me, but with that in mind, we can get started on the second segment of the show, where we talk about the Knicks filing a protest. And I took a longer break just to make sure I had all the details of this protest on my computer. So recently, the Knicks matched up against the Houston Rockets in Houston, and the game was really close. It was so close that it resulted into Jalen Brunson needing to hit a game-tying shot to send the game into overtime, which he did. So the score was tied 103-103, and Houston had one more possession to essentially take the lead and be able to win the game in regulation and not need to play in overtime. But late in the game, Aaron Holiday grabbed the ball at around, I'd say, 28 feet away from the basket and needed to fade away. So he chucked up a three and he kicked his feet out. Now, Jalen Brunson was in the area, and so he jumped trying to contest the shot. But unfortunately, because he kicked his feet out, it drew contact. And the refs called a defensive foul, and that resulted in 3 free throws coming in from Aaron Holiday, which he ended up making 2 out of the 3, and there was no time left in regulation, and therefore the Houston Rockets won the game 105-103. And now, obviously, Jalen Brunson, he jumped trying to get a contest, and this was called for an offensive foul. It resulted in 3 free throws. Not a way that you want to lose if you are the Knicks, especially against a bad team or a mediocre team like Houston. And, it was just a really bad loss for the Knicks. And the refs later admitted after the game that the call was incorrect, and that shouldn't have been a defensive foul, but rather an offensive foul for kicking his feet out. Now, it was so bad that this caused the Knicks to file a protest towards the NBA, and their hope in the protest, as it's highlighted here, says that they hope to play a quarter of overtime against Houston to determine who wins the game and who gets the win added onto for this season. Now, the last time, it says a little bit more in this article, the last time a protest was upheld was in December of 2007, and it was during a Heat versus the Hawks game, where Shaq was incorrectly ruled to have 6 fouls when he only had 5. And the game was resumed on March 8th, 2008. So the game wasn't even resumed in the same season as the call happened, and not only that, but I'm pretty sure Shaq left in free agency after that year from the Heat over to the Suns. And yeah, it says right here, Shaq was he was traded to the Suns right before then. So there wasn't really much success in this protest, and to top it all off, the Hawks ended up winning the game anyway. So again, there was no need for this protest because the Heat ended up losing. The Heat lineup wasn't even the same from when the protest originally happened. So what gives? Why even bother to do a protest like this? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever because the lineup wasn't even the same. Shaq wasn't on the same roster. Literally the second best player for the team wasn't even on the roster at the time. So how can you like confidently say, oh, let's replay the game without having the exact same team on your roster? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And I don't really see a reason to waste time on protests like this, like, especially if I were the Knicks, because like there's just no need for that. The Knicks have a very dominant the Knicks have a very dominant team right now, and they are in striking distance of making a deep playoff run. So this loss should just be taken as a bump in the road, honestly, because like, really, you're gonna waste your time on protesting a meaningless game against a team that's not even going to make the play-in? Like, Houston's not even going to make the play-in. And granted, this loss should have been taken as like, why are we losing to the Houston Rockets? Like, why are the Knicks losing to the Houston Rockets? That's what this loss should be. It should be a learning lesson for a lot of these players, because like, it just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And like, because of this, because of all of these protests, it's just another distraction, and it takes away from like the importance of these games. It takes a lot of this value away, and I just don't understand why would the Knicks just waste their time with all of this nonsense when they could just be trying to focus on the regular season at hand and continue their phenomenal season. Like, they're not even healthy at this rate, and they're still worried about this meaningless game that doesn't necessarily determine anything in terms of playoff standings for the Houston Rockets, nor does it determine the standings for the Knicks, because they're going to go, once they become healthy and after the All-Star break, they're going to be great. They're going to be absolutely fantastic in the rest of these games. Not something that the Knicks should worry about. Now, the NBA, on the other hand, they probably should take into account these refs. Like, these refs haven't been everyone's favorite this year. In all leagues, actually. In the NFL and even in the NBA, they have not been the favorite whatsoever. Now, the refs, they got the call wrong in an NFL. It was so bad that in the Lions game against the Cowboys, if you guys can remember that game, the refs got a call so bad that it ended up leading to that referee crew getting banned from reffing a game. So, with that in mind, if that same thing happens to the NBA for the playoffs, it probably should. Like, it should happen right now, because they should be trying to figure out what kind of refs are much more reliable and which ones make much more competent calls. Because I understand how in the heat of the moment it's not easy to make the right call, but there are refs that have the ability to do that, and I understand that it's part of the game, but bad calls shouldn't necessarily be a part of the game. Like, if we have the ability to replay it and get a call right, but we still choose not to get the call right, what's the point in even having a replay? And it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, not only that, I also don't want to see a bunch of teams now just randomly coming in to challenge a bunch of these games. I do not want to see that at all. And I hope that this Knicks game just doesn't get upheld, and no other team decides to challenge other previous games that happen in the season or future games that happen in the season, because it's unneeded. It's a waste of time. Maybe this should be taken as some things to discuss in the film room, like, why were the Rockets so close? That is the most important thing that the Knicks should take. That's the most important takeaway that the Knicks should come out of this game. Not that, oh, we were robbed of this game. Even if that were true. But the game shouldn't have been close to begin with for the New York Knicks. And I personally think that the Knicks are going to be fine, even with this loss under their belt. And this game won't be upheld. It'll be just like pushed under the rug. They don't need to talk about this game anymore. And it's whatever. It's like, it's water under the bridge. But with that, that's the end of the second segment. So tune in for the third segment where I give a recap of all of the games that went down on February 13th on that night. So tune in after this short break as we go into the third segment.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network, and we are in the third segment. So once again, I mentioned earlier that there is going to be a fourth segment, so stay tuned for that to figure out exactly what that is. But for the meantime, in this third segment, I'm going to be talking about some of the games that recently happened last night on February 13th. So a lot of games happened, and with a lot of big teams and a lot of big names that went down. So I'm just going to give a little recap of some of the big games that happened. So let's talk about the team that's been so far rolling recently, the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, Golden State and the Lakers, they've been playing a lot better recently in a lot of these games, and they've gotten much needed wins to secure a spot in the play-in. Right now, they are both hold the 9th and the 10th seed, and are steadily looking like it's going to be another LeBron and Steph Curry rematch in the Western Conference once again. So very excited for that. Very excited for LeBron to beat Steph Curry again. But I digress. Let's look at the box scores on this game. So all of the Lakers, they ended the game in double figures, all the starters. So that is a great work for the Lakers and their starting lineup. The rotations are looking a lot better recently. I know this is the Detroit Pistons, and the Pistons are not a great team, but still, this is a win that the Lakers needed. They are 29-26 now, so finally 3 games above 500. Very important if you're the Lakers. And Spencer Dinwiddie did not show up in this game, even though they just recently acquired him in the signings. He was speculated to be a very good asset. He only had 6 points, 2 of 6 from the field. Like I said before, the main stars for this game were the starting lineup. Austin Reeves ended the game with 15 points. D'Angelo Russell had 21 points. LeBron James led all the starters in scoring, no surprises, 25 points and 8 assists. Roy Hachimura, who's been phenomenal in the starting lineup and in the starting rotation, has 15 points. And Anthony Davis ended the game with 20 points and 14 rebounds. So, great win if you are the Lakers. A much-needed win. Not much really to say about the Pistons. I mean, the Pistons, they've been notoriously bad. They've gotten worse since trading away a lot of their players because they're on rebuilding mode. So, with that in mind, the Detroit Pistons, they're not doing anything with this regular season. They're going to try to build through the draft, which eventually, we'll see what they can do with those draft picks. Let's see if they can hit on those draft picks. They probably won't because they are the Pistons, but then again, you can always get lucky. So, not really much to say about that game, given how, the Lakers, they were by far the better team. And I would be saying a lot more if they would have lost this game, but they ended up winning in a blowout. So, not really much to talk about with that game whatsoever. And I have a lot to talk about this game, however. The Boston Celtics, they beat the Brooklyn Nets yet again, this time in the regular season. They won by 8 points. The final score was 118-110. The Nets, they put up a fight. The Nets did put up a fight, but we had no argument for Jason Tatum in this game whatsoever. Jason Tatum ended the game with 41 points and 14 rebounds. and he shot 12 of 26, but he was absolutely phenomenal in this game, and we had no answer for him whatsoever. All the starters also ended in double figures for the Boston Celtics, so that is very good for them. Derek White ended with 16 points, Jaylen Brown, 19 points, Al Horford, 16 points, Drew Holiday, 14 points, and 12 assists as well, coming in from Drew Holiday. There was no Porzingis in this game, and they were still able to win. So, really shows how much better their center rotation is now after acquiring a center in a trade, Sam Hauser in the trade as well, and they've been able to... They are the team to beat. They are the team to beat in the Eastern Conference, and it's very difficult to beat them, especially when Jason Tatum has a night like this. But regardless of that, we still put up a little bit of a fight. Mikal Bridges, Mikal Bridges ended the game with 27 points. Cam Thomas ended the game with 26 points. Nick Claxton ended the game with 10 points and 8 rebounds. And Lonnie Walker ended the game with 15 points. So, Mikal Bridges and Cam Thomas, they both shot 50% from the field. So, not really much more that you could ask of them. I mean, they were both the leading scorers on this team, on a very bad Brooklyn Nets team. I mean, I guess an option is play better defense, because, like, we are notoriously, like, bad on defense, especially with this year. And, like, we just allowed Jason Tatum to have 41 points in this game. Like, that's something that we cannot afford to do, especially if we're trying to make some noise in, like, and try to salvage this regular season. I mean, the Nets, I don't think they're going to be anything more than just, like, a play-in team, and a mediocre play-in team at best. I don't think there's going to be much that they can do to salvage this season. They play Boston at Boston, so we couldn't. The Nets couldn't beat them at home, so I doubt they're going to beat them again later tonight at 7:30. So that's one of the games to be mindful of to watch later tonight. But again, I don't think they are going to be able to stop the Celtics at home whatsoever. The Celtics are difficult to beat this year. And, I mean, they're always difficult to beat in the regular season, but this year especially, they're much more difficult to beat. Just looking at these box scores and just how they've shot efficiently as a team, it's just like there's nothing much you can really do. Now, the Bucks are back to losing yet again. They lost to the Miami Heat, which seems to be this team's kryptonite, I will say. They played the Miami Heat in the bubble as the number 1 seed, lost to the Miami Heat. They then played them again the next year in 2021, and they swept the Miami Heat. And then they played them again in the first round, and then they lost to the Miami Heat again while Miami was an 8th seed and while the Bucks were the 1st seed again. So the Bucks really they don't really have a good track record when going against the Miami Heat. And just looking at these box scores, a lot of players had a pretty good game. There was no Jimmy Butler. They beat the Bucks without Jimmy Butler. Wow. Okay. Bam Adebayo ended with a triple-double, 16 points, 11 assists, 12 rebounds. Nikola Jovic, again, my bad if I messed up that name, not Jokic, Jovic, ended the game with 24 points. Tyler Hero ended the game with 19 points. Duncan Robinson ended the game with 23 points as well. And we have Kevin Love making an appearance coming off the bench, scoring 19 points, and Jamie Jaquez Jr. scoring 12 points. And they shot, as a team, the Heat shot 51% from the field. Very good if you were the Heat. Very bad if you were the Bucks. Horrible defense. They cannot be shooting 51% from the field when you have such good perimeter defenders. It's unacceptable. Need to put a lot more effort out there on the defensive end. Giannis Antetokounmpo, again, was the only bright spot for this Milwaukee Bucks team. He had 23 points and 11 rebounds and 8 assists. Now, again, he needs the help, and Damian Lillard is not giving it to him. Only scoring 16 points as the number 2 option is unacceptable. And not providing any defense either, unacceptable. Let me see what his field goal was. He shot 5 of 14 from the field. That is not okay for the Bucks. They need Damian Lillard in his scoring. They also need Giannis. He's been providing on the scoring end, but it's just he needs the help. And Malik Beasley, a 3-point contest participant, 6 for 10 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3, 16 points, matched Damian Lillard in points. Obviously, there's a lot that Damian Lillard needs to improve on with this team. And the defense on this team also needs to improve, like, dramatically. They can't have the final score, them having 97 points and the other team having 123 points. That is not ideal. And Miami came out scoring in this game. Through the first quarter, Miami led 40-28. And once they had that lead, they were never giving it up. So that was some really bad defense to open out the game. Like, they can't continue that defense throughout the game if they're going to have such bad defense. Like, that's what adjustments are needed to be made. And Doc didn't make those adjustments or enough adjustments that he needed to in order to win this game. Now, again, I'm being a little bit more difficult on Doc than a lot of these players. Then I really should be a little more difficult on Dame, given how he's been shooting the ball recently in a lot of these games. Like, just looking at the box scores down here, he's been really, really inefficient in a lot of these games, and that's something that the Bucks cannot afford coming from Damian Lillard, since they got him for his offense. They let Drew Holiday walk so that way they could get Damian Lillard for the offense that he provides. If he's not providing the offense, what good is he there for? And that's a big problem coming in from the Bucks if they can't figure it out with Damian Lillard. Now, in other news, the Sacramento Kings, looking at the box scores right here, they matched up against the Phoenix Suns, and the Phoenix Suns ended up winning 130-125. Really high scoring game. De'Aaron Fox ended the game with 40 points. Domantas Sabonis ended the game with a 35-point triple-double. 35 points, 18 rebounds, and 12 assists from Sabonis. But unfortunately, this performance wasn't enough to beat the Suns and their big three with Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. We all know this. Bradley Beal played only 5 minutes in this game, so he might have succumbed to an injury. I'm not entirely sure what that was. Don't have the entirety of this game. I didn't watch this game because I was focused on the Lakers game. I was also focused on the Nets game, so didn't really get to watch the entirety of this game. So Bradley Beal only playing 5 minutes, but it was still enough for the Phoenix Suns to be able to pull through in the end. They were able to rely on Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Devin Booker had 25 points, 9 assists. Kevin Durant ended the game with 28 points and 11 rebounds. So, overall, very strong performance. Eric Gordon showed up coming off the bench with 23 points. So, great performance for the Phoenix Suns offensively. And nothing really much to say about the offense because we all know how good Phoenix is on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, their main problem is their defense, in my personal opinion. Domantas Sabonis getting a triple-double in this game and having De'Aaron Fox score 40 in this game as well. Like, they were lucky that their offense was rolling tonight and they were able to score 5 more points, because allowing somebody to drop 40 and allowing his teammate to score 35 and get a triple-double is unacceptable on the defensive side of the ball. And those types of big performances from players could happen any given night with how bad those defenses are. Again, I say this with the Pacers, and I can say this with Phoenix. They need something to fall back on just in case their offense isn't there to produce. Granted, unlike the Pacers, the Phoenix Suns have a lot more pieces on the offense to be able to produce consistently. So when one player isn't performing, the other guy from the bench can perform between either Eric Gordon or even Grayson Allen can perform, Devin Booker can perform, Bradley Beal can perform. A lot of these players, they can have a good game when one of their main players isn't having the best game. So with that in mind, that's sort of like the difference maker between Phoenix and the Pacers, but still, their defense is very lackluster. And it can't be that bad. It shouldn't be that bad going into the postseason. They cannot afford for it to be that bad. And now for the Kings, losing this game is also unacceptable, because now they're sort of dropping in the standings when they were the 5th seed at one point. They're right now the 8th seed in the Western Conference, and they could be looking to play in the play-in. Now, assuming that the teams don't change and they don't end up going farther down, they could face the Golden State Warriors in the play-in. And last time they matched up against Golden State ended up whooping them in 7 games. Well, not really whooping them, I guess, since the series went to 7 games. But in Game 7, when they were at home, Stephen Curry had like 50 points. So if I were a Kings fan, I would not want to go up against Steph Curry again whatsoever. Similar to how I'm a Nets fan, and I do not want to go up against Giannis whatsoever. So with that in mind, they have to hurry and maintain a very high seed in the Western Conference if they want to make a deep playoff run. In another game that went down, the last game actually that went down, was Minnesota going against Portland. Minnesota beat the Portland Trailblazers 121-109. Not really much to say. I mean, we should have expected this from Minnesota because Minnesota is a contending team at the moment, and the Portland Trailblazers aren't a contending team at the moment. They're one of the worst teams in the Western Conference, and with that in mind, they're going to be playing for the draft, as well as to try to develop some of their young guards and some of their young players that they have on the roster right now. So just looking at the box scores of this game, Anthony Edwards ended the game with 41 points. Big game from him. He shot 16 for 27, 4 of 8 from 3. Very efficient. Rudy Gobert ended the game with 16 points and 15 rebounds. Again, very efficient from him. Karl-Anthony Towns only played 9 minutes, but he made them count, getting 13 points. But overall, it was Anthony Edwards just being the baller that he is. I mean, he is arguably one of the best two-way players in the league right now. That's a very underlooked aspect of Anthony Edwards' game. His defense, it's fantastic at the guard position. And on for Portland's side, Fernie Simmons, one of their young guys, one of their great young guys, 20 points this game. DeAndre Ayton, 22 points and 16 rebounds, very impressive. But obviously wasn't enough to answer to the Timberwolves and the Timberwolves' defense and their much better offense. So nothing really much to say about this here because, I mean, this is expected from the Timberwolves. They should win these easy games. And the Portland Trailblazers, they're obviously going to be losing a lot of these games. Not really much to say about this game. It was really boring given how it was a blowout. I mean, not much to really say. Anthony Edwards had a great game, so that was the only good thing about this game. And the game wasn't really close throughout most of the game. It was not close. But with that, we are out of time for the recap. So tune into the 4th segment where I go ahead and I talk about Shaquille O'Neal getting his jersey retired for the Orlando Magic. And I'll talk about the Orlando Magic game that recently happened for his jersey retirement. So I will be right back after this short break. And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this segment, we are going to talk about Shaquille O'Neal getting his jersey retired for the Orlando Magic. Now, he previously had his jersey retired for the Lakers, obviously for being one of the only teams that was able to three-peat, as well as having his jersey retired for the Miami Heat, as he won a championship with them, with Dwayne Wade winning Finals MVP in around 2007. So, with that in mind, Shaq finally he didn't necessarily do as much for the Orlando Magic as he did for the Lakers or for the Miami Heat. But even with that in mind, I still believe that Shaq definitely deserved this jersey retirement a lot sooner rather than he did as of right now. I'm very surprised that his jersey wasn't retired sooner, given how at the time the Orlando Magic with Shaq, they were competing for championships, and that was the closest that the Orlando Magic has gotten to winning a championship and making it to the finals. Now, I mean, I'm not going to disrespect Dwight Howard and not say that he definitely did the same thing. He should also have his jersey retired, but Shaq has also done it multiple times, and being known as the most dominant center in NBA history, I feel like that sort of demands respect, and it demands that your jersey gets retired because his career started with the Orlando Magic. And he's one of the only players that can say that he beat Jordan in a 7-game series. I mentioned this in my first segment, and I'll mention it again. In 1995, the Orlando Magic matched up against the Chicago Bulls in the playoffs, and the Magic ended up winning in 6 games. And the argument is that Jordan wasn't at 100%, but yes, he was at 100%. He was averaging 31 points per game. So he beat Michael Jordan at 100%. And on top of that, he's also one of the only players that can brag about three-peating. And not many players can, a lot of players can brag about winning a championship, but three-peating, that's a dynasty. And Shaq was the Finals MVP 3 times in a row in that dynasty. And he's one of the very few people that can say that he beat Jordan and played with Kobe Bryant as well. He's actually one of the few players that could say he carried Kobe. The only player that could say he carried Kobe to a championship. In 2000, Shaq was averaging 30 points per game in the finals. And obviously he was averaging 11, 12 rebounds in the finals as well, but those are ridiculous stats that he was averaging. And obviously he didn't do that for the Magic, but he was still putting up ridiculous numbers as a center and was still regarded as one of the best centers in the league for the Orlando Magic. And Shaq is one of the most iconic basketball players, mainly because of all of the side quests that he likes doing throughout his career. Like, he's a DJ. A lot of people know him as a DJ. He's also a very popular analyst on NBA TNT. He and Chuck like to go at it against each other. Every single time that Chuck has to say something in an argument, Shaq always says, "I got 4 rings." So he always gets brought up with the 4. He's the catalyst for the ring debate, and it's he's very popular. And he also has his own show segment as well called Shaq and a Fool, where he gets call-outs. Actually, no, not call-outs. Pardon me. Excuse me. He takes highlights from a lot of games. Well, I guess technically they're lowlights of some of these games, and none of these players are safe. And a lot of these players get introduced in these lowlights. It's a little fun show segment on the side that NBA TNT does. Nobody's safe. Russell Westbrook isn't safe. Harden isn't safe. LeBron's not safe. Not even Kobe is safe from Shaq and a Fool. But obviously, Shaq, he's very iconic. And with all of this fame that's surrounding his name, I'm very surprised that his jersey wasn't retired sooner. But I guess maybe the Orlando Magic wanted to wait until they were good, because there was a huge stretch where the Orlando Magic weren't a good team since Shaq had left. But regardless, I mean, if they were waiting for a good team, why not retire his jersey when Dwight Howard was on the Magic? Dwight Howard beat LeBron James to make it to the finals, and he was one of the only centers that could say that he led the team to the finals, as well, the other center being Shaq. So, and with that in mind, obviously the Orlando Magic, they played a game recently. They played the Oklahoma City Thunder. So obviously OKC was looking to spoil Shaq's jersey retirement, and they did. And the Thunder ended up winning, 127 to 113. And obviously it was a really bad loss for the Magic, given how they were retiring Shaq's jersey number. And it's not something that you don't want to start out the day great with a celebration and then end it with a loss. You really don't want that whatsoever. And Paolo Banchero did all he could in this game, 23, 10, and 6. So he's a great passer. That's one thing that I don't really talk about Paolo Banchero that much, because I personally don't think he deserves to be an all-star this year, but he's a pretty good passer. So, and a great all-around player on the offensive side. Wendell Carter Jr. ended the game with 22 points. Jalen Suggs ended the game with 17 points. He's also been a much better scoring option for the Magic. But those are the only bright spots for the Magic in this game. It was all OKC. Jalen Williams ended the game with 33 points. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander obviously ended the game with 32 points. Finally, he's back to scoring 32. Chet Holmgren ended the game with 13 points. Only 13 points, but he shot 4 of 8. See, he doesn't get that many shot attempts. I mentioned this previously in the previous segment. He doesn't get that many shot attempts. Lou Dort ended the game with 8 points, but obviously he's a defender. And it was all Magic this entire game. And everybody shot relatively efficient. Same with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. 1 for 1 from 3. He's not a really good three-point shooter. He doesn't really shoot that many threes. So we'll see how that play style goes into effect in the postseason. But it was a relatively close game throughout, and OKC was slowly able to claw its way out in the end and end up winning. But regardless, yes, this game it wasn't really that close in the end, and OKC, they definitely deserved to win this game with how they played, and it was a very important game for OKC. And it really stinks if you are the Orlando Magic, because you were looking to end this game in a win to honor Shaq and his legacy with the Orlando Magic. Obviously, unfortunately, that didn't happen. And where do the Orlando Magic go from here? Let me just look at the standings. Right now, the Orlando Magic are 8th in the Eastern Conference, and they look to be in a play-in spot. I think they end up winning the play-in, and they hold an 8th seed for the playoffs. I think they're a lot better than a lot of the teams that are below them, the Bulls, the Hawks, even the Nets. If the Nets end up making the play-in, we'll see in the future. But I definitely think that they're better, that the Magic are better than those teams. And the team above him, the Miami Heat are obviously a lot better than those teams, and they'll probably take that playoff spot. But again, we'll see as the season progresses. But with that, we are out of time for the that is the end of the 4th segment, and we are out of time. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. And we also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And obviously, as I said before previously in other segments of the show, please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. The link is displayed in the ticker as well as in the description. I am your host, Nelson. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful day. And as always, take care.